Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this three-part series, we sit down and talk with Deb Dickerson. Deb's a decorated former LAPD officer, tactical flight officer, and pilot. Deb Dickerson thrives on a life filled with challenge and passion. Born and raised in the tight-knit community of Guttenberg, Iowa, with a population of 1,500 people, Deb developed a competitive spirit through sports like softball, basketball, and track. A pivotal moment came in 1984 during a vacation to Los Angeles for the Olympic trials. Setting eyes on the city and experiencing her first airplane flight, Deb fell in love with flying. With unwavering determination, she traded her Midwestern roots for the California sunshine, starting a career in retail while harboring dreams of becoming a pilot. Driven by a desire for service, Deb's path took her to law enforcement. She joined the ranks of the LAPD in the late 1980s, where she became a respected officer. Her diverse career encompassed roles in Hollywood Patrol, Vice, and the MTA Task Force. She even had an opportunity to ghostwrite for the mayor and chief of police. A natural leader, Deb broke barriers as the first female chief tactical flight officer at LAPD Air Support. For 8 years, Deb served as a tactical flight officer. She was then the chief tactical flight officer for 2 years before being selected as a pilot. Witnessing the aftermath of 9/11 firsthand, Deb actively participated in peer counseling efforts. Retirement in 2017 proved short-lived. Missing the thrill of flight, Deb returned to aviation in the Los Angeles basin as a news helicopter pilot. Thank you to our sponsors, Ysong, Technosonic, and Robinson Helicopters. Cheers.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Shanley.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, through the shotgun, through something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
And as a kid was when Rodney King, for me, happened. I remember watching the news. My dad was a police officer in Anaheim. So I remember being scared for my dad during that time. Can you talk about what the Rodney King riots were like? And then also how law enforcement changed for you guys in the city of LA in the wake of what happened. And Jack, what was your experience like during that time and the wake of that?
I like how Deb described the kind of the light switch of it changing. It certainly did change everything and how we were looked at, and it wasn't pleasant. For the riots itself, I was in Metropolitan Division in Boy Platoon, and the day it kicked off, we were training for crowd control at a fire station out in North Hollywood. And we watched the verdicts on a little Panasonic black and white TV that somebody brought to work in their car. We gathered around a car and all listened. And as soon as we heard the verdicts, we went, here we go. We knew what was going to happen. Every cop in LA knew that was going to happen. The mayor and all the politicians, they were like acting stunned that this would happen. We all know it was going to happen because we were already hearing the heat that Deb was talking about. We were already getting the looks and the stuff thrown at us and the verbal abuse. So we knew what was going to happen. And we immediately went to 77th Southwest and deployed down there. And I remember driving down MLK toward Crenshaw with Gordy Olson, and we got pummeled with stuff. And there was 1,000 people in the street. And I remember being stunned and going, what? Look at all these people, and we got out of Dodge and reported to the command post. The other thing that I do remember about that whole week was how embarrassing it was to not be allowed to do anything. I mean, the officers that got involved in some of the best stuff, they weren't working that day. They were on vacation, and they called in and they said, hey, yeah, come on in. The Metro guys particularly, come on in. Don't go to the command post. Come here. And they went out and did their own thing, and they got into all sorts of activity. Most of us were sitting at a command post, and we'd go out, and I was within blocks of Florence and Normandy with a full team, fully armed, helmets, ready to go, on Florence, walking toward Florence and Normandy from Vermont and being ordered not to do that. I remember the lieutenant talking to the command post, and they said, no. They said, can you take that intersection without using force? And I remember him laughing on the radio and going, are you kidding me? There's bullets skipping off the street here. No. And they said, come back to the command post. That was vivid. That's still vivid. The embarrassment of not being able to go in and do what we were trained to do. We could have quelled that riot early. And I've told people for years that if LAPD did their job that day and knocked down Florence and Normandy and did it right, went in there and took care of business at Florence and Normandy, most of the rioting doesn't occur because people would have seen that on their TVs and gone, well, I ain't going out. Holy mackerel, I'm not going out. LAPD's taking care of business here. Instead, they saw lawlessness. And they sat in their houses watching that and go, I need a new pair of sneakers. I need a TV. And boom, they go out, and next thing you know, it happens. And it's a week of rioting. And by the way, Deb mentioned these neighborhoods. Vermont comes to mind. And Deb has flown over Vermont between Manchester and Florence a gazillion times, as I have. There are still concrete slabs on Vermont from the riots in the 90s. Unbelievable. It's tragic. It's tragic.
Yeah, I was always really intrigued with what happened during that time. And when I started as a firefighter, a lot of the guys that I worked with had gone down there as a part of a strike team to help put out a lot of the structure fires and things that were burning in that area. But they said, kind of like you, they could not go into these areas and actually do any work. One, they was unsafe, but two, they just didn't have the resources they needed to attack all the fire activity that was taking place in the city.
Everything was burning. It was amazing how much smoke was in the air. Remember all the smoke, Deb?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you couldn't even see the sun during the day. Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, thanks for kind of going down that path. Like I said, it's always something that's interesting to me. And, as I only saw it as a bystander. So to hear your guys' account of that is really interesting.
Deb, what was your favorite before air support? Because air support's a whole nother level here. Before air support, what was your favorite job that you did?
Oh, Hollywood.
On the department.
Oh, Hollywood. Work in Hollywood.
Hollywood training officer?
I don't care if it was when I was a probationer or a training officer. It didn't matter. I loved Hollywood because it had everything, every crime that you can imagine. The only thing that was different was that when they said like a 415 man, you took that with a grain of salt. It was going to be a 415 person. You just didn't know what kind of a person. So, they're a little iffy on things like that. But that was in a heyday when, prostitution was running rampant on the west side over on Sunset and, the gang stuff. And it was just fun, and you'd go in and you'd do a foot beat and everybody loved you. I mean, all of the store owners and everybody, they knew you by name, because you had your designated areas. It was just a lot of fun. I worked with some characters there,
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of characters, but, I had so much fun in Hollywood. I loved it there.
Hollywood did have variety. That is for sure. It really did. You had a little bit of everything in that area. There was beautiful multi-million-dollar mansions, and there was rough neighborhoods, all in the same. You could go from one call to another. I mean, that was a very unique place.
I remember going to Burt Reynolds' house on an alarm. I went to Greg Kinnear. Kinnear, is that his last name? Anyway, I went to his house, and it was two females. My partner was female. We pull up, and he has an alarm call, and we're like, "Hi, how are you? Everything okay?" He's like, "I really don't know. My door, whatever, was open." I'm like, "Do you want us to clear your house?" He goes, "Oh my God, that would be amazing if you would do that. Are you sure you can?" I'm like, "Are you asking because we're two females, or dude, we're here. You got us. You pay for us. Here we are. You pay my salary, so here I am." And I always thought that was funny. It was like, how do you feel when two female police officers show up at your door? I mean, what is your first instinct? Is it, where the hell did these two come from? Or can they really do the job? Or they're like, oh, this is bitch, and I got to, I don't know. But it was always weird when I had a female partner and we'd go somewhere. Because people would look at you differently, and it was a little weird sometimes.
Any celebrity arrests?
I did not. I am not like Manny arresting the clown,
does.
No. No. But we stopped. Who did we stop? Okay. I wish I could remember his name.
But you had contact with them constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Celebrities, contacts.
I did. And then, I did, I was a wish granter for the Starlight Foundation, which is like Make-A-Wish. So I knew a lot of celebrities. I have worked with a lot of celebrities. And the one thing I can tell you about them, the majority of them are just like you and I are. They're just cool people who do their thing. And outside of doing their job of being a celebrity, you know, they have a house and they go to the market and they have to drive their car and they run red lights and, you know, they're just normal people. So, you know, that's always an interest. I'm not a person who gets starstruck. It doesn't matter. And I don't know if it's from working in Hollywood and being around it so much or, you know, doing the charity work and interacting with people all the time. But when they figure out that A, you're a police officer and B, you carry a gun, and all of a sudden you're a really interesting person to them. So,
So you decided to apply to air support as a tactical flight officer, and they called you up. You made it, and you went up there for your initial 1 month loan. Tell us about that.
Well, first I interviewed once when I had 5 years on, because their initial advertisement never said you had to have how much time you had to have on. So I think I had just under 5. I think I had 4 and like 10 months or something.
Yeah.
And I remember they said, okay, you're up. And I walked back and the captain stopped me in the middle and says, you don't have 5 years on the job, do you? And I said, no, I don't. And he goes, oh, we can't give you an interview. I'm like, oh, okay. And I said, well, okay, thank you. I'll be back when I have 5 years on. Thank you so much. And I left. And then I got like 15 different phone calls from upper management, you know, commanders, assistant chiefs, deputy chiefs, everybody going, okay, we just want you to know that, you know, it has nothing to do with you being a female. It was just that you didn't have the time. And I'm like, I'm not going to sue you guys. I want to come there. I want to work there. I'm not going to sue you. I don't care. I'll be there. You know, if that's what you say I need, that's what I'll get that time and I'll do it, you know, and it gave me time to go and do other silly stuff, you know, in the department, do fun things. So I ultimately oraled and got on the list and came up for my 1 month loan, which was, that was enlightening. My trainer was, what I love about my trainer was this. He said one thing to me on day one: I will not let you get a job here and let them say it's because you're a female. That will not happen. And I'm like, okay, let's go. You know, and I don't know if that was meant to put the fear of God into me or to let me know that he was going to be hard on me, because he was, you know, because we strive to get, you know, within 1 or 2 houses. And, you know the analogy, you know, how we work everything out. And we did a map book. We didn't have no moving map. We had a map book and everything was done manually. And there was a calculation for addresses, you know, everyone is like 4 on certain streets. So you go 8, you go, you know, some of them go to 50, some go to 100. There's such a thing. And our thing was always, you know, you had to be within 2 or something. Not my trainer. My trainer was like, you need to be on every house every time. And if I was off, he had his water bottle, you know, like an Arrowhead water bottle, and he would hit me in the helmet with it. That is not bad. Damn. It was like, I learned very quickly to not be wrong. And I never got airsick. That was the one thing. You know, I can't go on teacup things at Disneyland, but I could spin in orbit all day long.
Yeah.
He asked me where Southwest Station. He said, take me to Southwest Station.
Thank you to our sponsor, Wysong Enterprises. Wysong Enterprises offers specialty rotorcraft completion facility, focusing on solutions and installs for customers in various industries, including EMS, law enforcement, energy utility, forestry, tourism, security, and corporate applications across major OEM platforms. Visit us at wysongusa.com.
Somebody who had helped me do my map book, who I will not name, had me on the wrong street in my map book, because, you know, you have them all coded and everything. And I had never been to Southwest.
They had the station?
I had never been to
Southwest. You had the station on the wrong street?
I had the station on the wrong street.
Oh.
You got to tell me where it is right now. I can't even tell you what streets they are at, what it's at right now. But whatever it is, I was like 2 blocks off. He put that thing on the nose and he spun it like a top. And he goes, you know, officers just get shot. Officers down. There would be an ambush. So and we're like spinning like this. And I'm like, I was like, oh no, it's here. And he pulled it over the top of there. I pulled my mic and I was like, I thought there's a bag coming out somewhere because I can't make this right now. But I never ever made a mistake after that. And God love him, Kevin Coppin. If you don't, And he would say that all the time. You will not make it here because you're female. That will not happen. Not on my watch. Ain't happening. And I appreciate everything he ever did. He gave me the foundation to be as good as I was.
Yep. That's important. Yeah. That foundation's so important in that first month.
Yep. Then you go back out because they didn't have a spot for me.
Right.
I had to go back to patrol.
Right. How long?
It was under a year. It's probably like 8 months because I waited for George Gonzalez to make sergeant. Yep. And I would call all the time. And I talked to Ed McKean because Ed wanted me there because he wanted me to play softball for the department team. Everybody's got their reasons for wanting you somewhere, but so I would call Ed all the time. Is he gone yet? Is he gone yet? Is he gone? I'd look at the transfer. Is he gone yet? And finally, it was like George Gonzalez, P2 Air Support to the sergeant to wherever the heck he went. Yep. And I didn't even care. I was like, woo, bye, George.
Yeah.
And then I came in.
That's great.
So it was like I think it was like 8 months, and then I came to Frank King. Frank King was my next trainer.
Frank King, Captain Frank.
Love Frank. Mr. Man of many talents.
Yep.
So
many of them are hidden talents.
Oh yeah.
That people don't know. I mean, until you really get to know Frank, and Deb and I both really got to know Frank. Mm-hmm. He trained us, and he became our friend, our trainer, our confidant, our cheerleader. I mean, Frank is wonderful. Frank plays the cello.
Yes.
I mean, just
it's very bizarre. Like it's so bizarre that you're like, you do what? But yeah, no, Frank was amazing. But Frank is the biggest prankster known to mankind.
Oh,
he would be there. You would be looking out the window because, you never just like sit there in the helicopter when you're a TFO, especially when you're in training. You are looking, you're looking for something. And you're always looking. Yeah. And then he would start doing the Air 3, come up. And you're like, oh, yeah, Air 3, go ahead. And control would be like, we're not looking. Like, damn it, Frank, stop it. And we just do stuff like that constantly. And so one day I'm like, I'm getting him back. I'm on this. So I had a calendar in my locker and it had pigs on it. So I cut the pigs off, and we always kept our helmets in the lobby. And I put his visor down. I put these pigs right there. And I put his visor back up. So the pigs would be looking at him, put him back up. We go to take off. He'd never put his visor down ever on takeoff. Ever. This day he decides he's doing this thing while we're taking off. And I'm like, holy shit, he can't even see where he's going. There's these big pigs in his visor. He's like, what the hell? So that was the one and only time I ever got him back.
Rubber snakes, rubber lizards on your seat. I mean, and the radio thing. Hey, R3, you got? Hey, R3, you got something? I mean, he just do that where you'd hear that. He did that all the time. Or he would tell you, hey, did you hear that? And you hear what? Man, that didn't sound good. He just plant these seeds that there was trouble when there wasn't. I mean, but Frank was a calm, cool trainer.
Oh yeah.
And as he made you laugh, he made you relaxed. I mean, I know that I thrived with him because I was relaxed. There was no pressure. I didn't feel the pressure. There was pressure, but I didn't feel it because Frank's demeanor was so perfect for that.
He never hit you with a water bottle.
Not once. Not once.
I feel like in training,
he would laugh at you, but he never hit me or yelled at me.
In training, you internalize so much pressure on your own. You don't need someone externally doing that, kind of creating more stress than is necessary. I had a very similar experience with my CFI, Kevin Hart. He was very calm, pretty laid back. He knew what we're talking about. He knows that you're putting the pressure on yourself. The other thing that I had a hard time with CFIs is when they try and explain something to you in flight. Like you're in a really critical phase of flight. You're really focusing on what you're doing. Like, hey, bro, this probably isn't the time to explain something to me. I can't even process what I'm doing right now. Right. So I liked it when, we'd land and they'd be like, hey, think about X, Y, and Z on the ground instead of when my brain's already saturated and overloaded, Right. So anyways.
And Lord knows that your brain is overloaded when you're learning the TFO job. Oh my gosh, it's constant.
Yeah. It is
constant
overload.
You
are learning every single day. There is something new every single day. That's what I always loved about police work anyway. It was never the same old thing.
Exactly.
But especially at Air Sport, because you are doing, I was over Steve Gaida, when Steve Gaida got killed. I was over that.
Yeah.
Hardest thing you've ever done. But as long as you don't know who the cop is on the ground, you just know that he's one of yours, you can do your job. When you get back and you find out, whole new ballgame. But So that's what
Absolutely.
that training does to you. That's what they instill in you, is how to be calm, because everybody on the ground is not calm.
Right.
And being a female, your voice inflection is, I think, greater sometimes. And I think that if you raise your voice on an octave, people think you're like getting hyped up. So as a female, at least, that's what I learned. You really have to stay really level and with your voice. Doesn't matter if you are crazed out of your mind or overloaded. Everything is good. Life is good. Life is grand.
Yep.
Here we go. So,
and I can tell the audience and you, John, firsthand that Deb mastered that. She mastered that. I mean, her voice was always the same. It was like this laser beam line. Even though you knew she was excited, or even though you knew she was stressed, or even, in the cockpit, because you're seeing what's going on, she was gifted at keeping her voice in that tone that just had confidence and calm, and it trickles down. We said that to TFOs forever. If you're calm, the people on the ground you're talking to will calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Deb was gifted at that. It was one of her many good traits as a tactical flight officer that not everybody can do. Some people, they're pretty good, and then it hits the fan and they start screaming on the radio. And it's like, no. That isn't what we do here. You can, on the intercom, you can say whatever you want, any tone you want, but when you key that mic, those people on the ground better hear a calm, cool tactical flight officer.
Right.
Yeah.
And Deb was very good at that.
Well, it was my voice that brought my husband to come and meet me. So,
Ooh, well, that story's coming up.
He heard me handling a call over Rampart and was like, wow, I wonder what she looked like.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Here I am. Yeah.
Wow.
Here I am, 16 years, 3 kids later. Here we are.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I remember talking to Manny, and one of the things he brought up was one radio call away from responding to an officer down call to a critical scenario that, as a TFO, you have to be on your A game to handle. Can you talk about, having been through that experience, Deb, some considerations that others should think about when it comes to responding to an officer down scenario as a TFO?
Thank you to our sponsor, Technisonic Communications. Technisonic Communications is a proud provider of the critical airborne communications equipment utilized every day on every mission. Law enforcement, EMS, forestry, federal and military operators all trust their communications to Technisonic. Visit TIL.ca to learn how Technisonic can support your mission communications.
Well, it was New Year's Eve, so you already know that it's going to not be a good night, usually. And I was working morning watch. I usually work morning watch because that was my thing. I'm not a morning person. You guys are lucky I got up this early to come to do this. No.
And for those people that are not LAPD oriented, morning watch is graveyard shift. Yes. Midnights. Everybody calls it something different. LAPD calls it morning watch. Go ahead.
And I was flying with one of the best, and we sat it down on a rooftop because that's what we do at LAPD, because the gunfire is enormous on New Year's Eve. So a lot of times we'll just set it down. So we were in downtown already, and that shooting came out, and you knew it was bad when you first had heard the help call come out. And I said, we got to go. And Bill said, okay, are you sure? I said, we got to go. So we got up, and the first thing I did was take a really deep breath. It's like, okay, this is on. It's not going to be good. Don't F this up, So off we go, and we were there in 2 minutes, probably from the call coming out. We were over it. So then, all of a sudden, everything that you have learned from water bottle hitting and pranksters and everything else, everything that you have stored in your brain has now come to play. And you've prepared for this for however long you've been there. And we get over it, and the first thing you just see is cop cars everywhere, because police officers never know how to park for anything.
That's true.
Because adrenaline, they want to make sure that their buddy, their partner, their whatever is okay, and that the bad guy is not going to get out of this. So you're setting up a perimeter. You're trying to get people to move their cars. You're trying to get RA units in there. You're trying to get motorists to escort the RA. There are so many things happening, and you've got people saying, "Who is it? Who is it?" And all I can think of is, please don't say who it is. And at the end, all you can do is sit back, and then we land. And then everybody's like, hey, everything there was good. He's not going to make it. This is who it is. And I worked with him. So it's like, well, shit.
Yeah.
But you're like, everything that you trained for so long, whether it was in patrol and how you handle things, that's where you get the base for being a tactical flight officer. If you can't do it on the ground, if you don't know what the officers on the ground need, you can't be a good TFO. You just can't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they have the requirements that they do, because you have to be able to tell people what to do, and they have to know that you know that you're doing it in their interests. So getting them when they're that amped up over an officer involved shooting call is difficult. It's difficult. And just to, like I said, all I could do is take that deep breath right when we were launching or lifting from that rooftop and just go, it's on. And then what happened.
Yeah. You talk about the tone of your voice in a situation like that being critical. It's absolutely true. I think as you're overhead, kind of creating a picture of what's happening on the ground and setting a perimeter and all the things you're doing, for the officers that are inbound, hearing a kind of sterile tone of voice, I think probably allows them to drive in a much safer manner than, like Jack said, if you're screaming on the radio, trying to get control over the situation that way.
Oh yeah. If you're crazy, they're going to be crazy. That's just how that just changes the game. That's how it happens. So
yeah.
But and as you guys know, when you're over a call and things are happening fast, I talk a lot and I talk fast. So you have to moderate all of that too. Keep it simple. Slow your voice down. Make sure that they hear you. You don't need to be repeating yourself. I don't need control to sit there and repeat everything I say. I think the worst I've ever been is when you telling control to, stop. Just make it stop. Stop talking. Don't repeat. Just give me the air. Let me do my thing. But when you're over critical situations, that's what we do. We just ask control. Hey, I need the air. I just need it because this is what we got to get this done, because otherwise everything's out the window, because everything happens fast, as everybody knows. If you've ever been in a foot pursuit, watched them on the news, whatever you've done, you think that they may have gone a couple houses. They're 4 blocks down already. So I think that having that voice and that calmness really helps. If I could bring that to my everyday life now with my kids, it would be a phenomenal thing. my calmness goes right out the window.
I understand that.
But deep breaths are a common thing for me, even with my kids. It's like, okay, okay, here we go. But, it evolves so much from, like I said, with the water bottle. You're thinking, oh my God, this man's crazy. But that pressure that he put on me when I was training is what helped me be good over those kind of calls. That's where it started. That's where I ended.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. At some point in your TFO life, you applied to be the chief TFO, and you were selected as the chief TFO. Tell us about the chief. What does the chief TFO do at LAPD Air Support? And then tell us about how you started, what you did to start the aircrew course, the beginnings of the aircrew course that John has attended and Jeff has attended, and so many of our listeners over the years have attended. That started with Deb when she was chief TFO. Tell us about that.
I applied for the chief TFO only because, well, there are a few reasons, but one was that to be the chief TFO isn't like some phenomenal thing where they give you like this great pay raise and you get to do no. You are bombarded with everything known to mankind. You are responsible for advertising and interviewing and hiring and doing the training and picking out some awesome trainers to help you and having some really good mentor TFOs to help you out, because that's not a one-person job. You have a crew that works with you to make it extremely successful. And that's why the TFOs at Air Support are as successful as they are. And it didn't start with me. It started way before me with some really great chief TFOs. You sit there and you take these kids who all they want to do is be there. That's all they want to do. And the washout rate's very high, extremely high, as I'm sure, anybody who listened to Manny's interview would tell you. And you break people's hearts and, you shatter their dreams. And those things are hard. But you know what? It's what's in the best interest for the guys on the ground. If you can't do it, we'll know it. We'll know it way before you do. I mean, I had kids who would be, you'd go to like, okay, take me to 123 North, whatever street. And you'd be down at, 456 South something. And then you go at the end of the day, you'd be like, hey, how'd you think you did? They're like, oh, I think I did really well. I was like,
Yeah.
Were we in the same helicopter at the same time? Because no. This is how this works. But it was fun. I brought in some really cool people, some really fun people, some quite the character kind of people. But that's what makes air support work. All the different characters, personalities, and everything. All really great people, all of them. They could do that job, and whatever the situation was, whether it was good, bad, or ugly, we got them to the point where they needed to be. And it wasn't me. It was those people that worked with me, those trainers. But we used to go to the CHP aircrew course as TFOs. Yep. We would go down there. Anybody who'd ever attended it was great. It was a great course. All of the instructors were LAPD. It's like
a lot of them were, yeah.
And so we were like, well, why are we paying to go? And we paid, by the way, to go to this course. It was post-certified. They're like, why aren't we paying to have our own people teach us? Why don't we do this for our own people? So we started looking into it and what it would take. And, there's a whole thing about curriculum and what you have to do and what the curriculum has to look like. And to get it
post-certified, as I recall.
It was just short of a nightmare. Chris Owen was one of the guys who helped me. Jim Way helped me. I know I'm going to forget everybody who helps, but, we had a crew that did this and wrote this thing up and made this happen and got it post-certified. And it was good, but it has evolved immensely since then.
Yeah.
That was, I can't remember when that was, 03, maybe.
Well,
I can't remember.
That could be.
And it has grown into like an animal. Manny puts on a phenomenal course, and he's got people from all over the country, outside the country. He's got people calling him. Hangar Z has been huge for promoting him, apparently. He's got a ton of people. And I have sat through there. I teach in one of the classes. I teach the history of air support for him. When he can't get somebody else, he resorts to me. And so it's a great course. And I had a good time doing it. And people always were like, why didn't you become a pilot sooner? Why didn't you move over to the other seat? And I said, don't want the responsibility. I'll take responsibility for those guys on the ground, and I'm comfortable with that. I feel good that I can do that, and people will go home, as safe as I can get them there. I didn't want that responsibility of that right seat. I was like, nope. And then it came time, and it was like, okay, now I'm ready. Now I'm good. I'm going to apply for a pilot spot. Yeah. Let's see where this goes. I did not compete against Manny. We did not interview at the same time for a pilot spot. He interviewed before me.
Real quick before we move on, I want to go back to the aircrew course and the foundings of that, because so many people's career, including my own, in aviation began with that course. The question I asked when I made the decision that I wanted to pursue air support was, what can I do to make myself a better candidate so that when I go into this interview, I can stand out?
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
And the two things I was told was, one, to take Jack's class, and two, go to the LAPD aircrew school. And both of those were absolute spot on as far as advice goes. There wasn't many other things you could do outside of those two things. You could read Jack's book that was also put out, and Kevin Means had a book as well.
Yeah.
But that was about all you could do at the time. So really cool to think back on the effort that you put into the beginnings of that class, and to think how many people's careers have launched. That's been the launch point for them. So thank you from me for all the effort you put into doing that, because it was really impactful for me. It was probably one of the neatest classes I ever went to. Remember, I got to ride the Metrolink from San Bernardino into LA, and just doing that by itself was cool. And get off and all the things that you guys did to make the class what it was. The breakfast, the lunch, the networking that took place there. Absolutely amazing. So thank you for developing that. And I know it's a lot of work to start something like that. And you talk about ideas. A lot of people have a lot of ideas, But the hardest thing to do is, make that first step to actually make it a reality. And you did that. So
yep.
Mucho
that was
kudos to you. That
was Deb. And I remember vividly the nightmare that it was just dealing with the curriculum and outlines. Remember the outlines, Deb?
I think I probably still have them. I think I have them here.
It had to be a certain format, and Deb would present them, and the person would kick them back and say, "Oh no, this has to be indented two more space." I mean, it got down to that kind of stuff, and that was Deb that was dealing with all that. I mean, she had the people, she had the content, she had all that, but she needed to get it approved. That was monumental.
Oh yeah,
it was monumental.
The
and then post approved.
Mm-hmm.
Well, post is a pain in the butt. She did all that hard work, and that course isn't here today for Manny to do all the cool stuff that Manny does with it without Deb getting that ball rolling. And she deserves a lot more credit than she gets for that course. For those of us that were there and saw what she was doing, we know that it was crazy, and that she had to work extremely hard to do it. But here we are. And just like you, John, we get comments all the time from people around the world. I mean, we have friendships of people in Europe and Australia and across this country because of that course. We all do. And it's a great course, and it has gotten better and better and better and better. And now Manny's been at the reins for a while now, and it's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
It really is.
Yeah. But I think that, remember how I talked about how everything you do in life kind of builds, and you'll get to a point, and I always talked about this when I was the chief TFO, was be like, hey, you're going to fly with a lot of different people, and you're going to learn a lot of different things. Some of them work for you, some of them don't. And the ones that don't, you just store them somewhere in the back. So when we were doing that post course, or, the aircrew course, I had to revert back to when I worked PRD. Remember that?
Yeah.
That division.
Yep.
That's where that all comes from. That's where I learned to write for the department. That's how I knew that's how I made the ingress into different things, because I knew all these people. So sometimes you're doing something you really don't necessarily love, but you're learning so much from it. And then you just revert back to it all the time. Yeah. So,
yeah.
And
love that.
Everybody trains a little differently or learns a little differently, and things work different for them. Like when pilot training, I couldn't figure out the electrical system. And Sean Malachi said, it's like a bus. People get on the bus and people get off the bus. I'm like, I got it. So, I mean, everything you learn differently. And sometimes it takes somebody just tweaking it a little bit to make it work for you.
Yeah. Some of our listeners have been to LAPD Air Support and know what it looks like. It's a very large rooftop heliport. And it has a big old logo in the middle of the deck. Don't be shaking your head, Deb. It has this huge logo that's out on the deck of the buzzard, the LAPD buzzard, which we're very proud of. That buzzard is a very set, it's set in stone at Air Support. So that logo gets worn, just from weather and wear and tear. And at some point, the decision was made to paint the logo, to repaint the logo. And Deb was very involved in that. And some other things happened during the painting of that logo. Tell us about the logo, Deb.
I'm not sure what you're going for, but...
you know exactly where I'm going.
No, I don't. The logo is huge. The logo is like sacred. When you walk on our deck, you're told, do not walk on the logo or you'll be doing 25 push-ups. And we don't care who you are, personally. We care less. You can be the chief of police. You walk on it, you're going to do 25. This is the way this stuff works. When I've landed there in my new position, and I've told the people that I bring in there, do not walk on that logo, or you'll be doing push-ups, and you will be the news. So let's not do this, and we'll go around. But anyway, you have to paint it, and you have to have certain kind of paint, and the city. Don't ever try to do anything with the city of LA because it's very, very complicated. So we just do this on our own, and we didn't talk to the building people or anything. I went out and I researched. And I got people to donate the paint for me that would withstand the world, allegedly. But so yes, and then I had to have helpers that would come and help me, and we would paint the logo. There it is. There's the story right there.
Helpers?
What?
Any particular
I'm not
helpers
sure who you're
that
talking about right
helped
now.
on that logo? Why am I having to drag this out of you?
I'm not-
You know exactly what we're going at. Was Manny a helper?
No, yes, Manny was a helper.
On the logo.
Manny was.
Oh, really?
But that was very innocent. That was very innocent. I was also, I used to give Manny dating advice. So we'd be out painting the logo and I would give him dating advice. You know, I'd see the girls he was dating or whatever. He'd bring them around. He'd be at Christmas parties, whatever. He'd tell me about them. And I go, you know, she was this, she was that, whatever. That one, that girl's voice was annoying, whatever it was. And I would just, you know, that one's geographically undesirable. You know, she lives like 100 miles away. Why do you want to, what? That makes no sense to me. Yeah. So was
this before or after you heard your voice transmitted
this
on the
was
radio?
after, because he was already at air support then.
Okay.
So, yes. But, and I don't know if he ever told this on his, I don't remember, but he had brought his parents up on a ride along. And I was there and I was saying goodbye to him. You know, I just happened to be driving across the deck for some reason. I must have been parked on the deck for some reason. And I'm driving by and his parents were like, ooh, who's that? And he's like, stop it. She's my coworker.
It's my future wife.
Yeah. But yes. So yes, we did paint the logo together.
Yep. And Sparks eventually flew there.
Yes, Sparks.
So, yeah. And here we are. What, 16
years and 3 kids.
Wow.
Mhm.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
3 very active, wonderful kids. Well, that's cool.
Very active.
That's cool. Now, eventually, you decided to switch seats and go into pilot training. And you applied and you got it. Talk about that decision and what your pilot training was like.
Well, like I said, I could have done it a long time prior to that. You know, I was a TFO for 10 years. I had all of my hours and everything that were required at the time. You know, the requirements change, but at the time I had all my requirements and everything, probably at my 7-year mark, 6 or 7 year mark. Everybody's like, are you going to try for pilot? You're going to try for pilot? I'm like, no, I'm good. I like what I'm doing. I love what I do. You know, it's still like being a patrol officer, just in the air. I'm good. I don't want the responsibility. I want no part of it. And then I was like, you know what? I'm ready. I'm good. I'm ready. I talked to a couple of pilots. They're like, you're ready. You should do it. So I apply. I go into the training, and it's intense training. You know, the people that train you are very good at what they do. You know, well, like I said, they have ways to help you when, you know, I was in a class with 3 other guys, and they have a way to teach all 4 of you, even though you all learn differently. So I remember when I was TFO, you know, they do emergency flight training, and Pat McNamara is trying to get me to do a run on landing, and I just keep bringing it to a hover. Because usually a TFO can bring a helicopter to a hover. That's just a fact. That's why they teach you to run it on. So he keeps saying, I'm like, I cannot get past the part of running a $1.5 or $2 million piece of equipment across asphalt. I cannot get that out of my brain. I can't. I just can't. I'm sorry. He goes, okay, but you need to. And so he would use like weird words. I can't even remember what he would say. Like very weird verbiage. At one point, I'm like, I don't even know what the hell you're telling me to do. And so then he was just like, just put it on the effing ground. Just let it slide. I'm like, oh, okay. And so that's what you start doing. But anyway, that's just a different way. You know, I just needed different verbiage there, I guess, to get me through my little mental block. And so training was kind of like that for me occasionally, you know, but, you know, we learned at the Bell Jet Ranger, a very forgiving piece of equipment, loved flying it. You know, we did hundreds of autos to the ground. And that's what I think a lot of people in the industry don't understand, is that LAPD does more autos to the ground during their training than anybody. I don't think anybody does them to the ground.
No.
And if you look at it,
that's for sure.
The reason is it's very simple. The worst part of anything that's going to happen to you is going to be in that last probably 70 feet, you know? So when you hit that flare, that's when this stuff's going to get real. You know, as long as you have that thing set up, you can put that wherever. But that last 65, 70 feet is where you either make it or break it. And so that's why we do all those autos to ground. And my trainer at the time was Bob Price, military pilot, had his quirks, loved him though, because he would be like, okay, I want it in the middle of the 4 on the runway, you know, not on a line. You have to be centered on the 4 of the runway, or of the numbers on the runway. They're like, what? And so you can, you know, with the Jet Ranger, you can make that thing dance. You can manipulate that thing and make it dance. And so again, by having somebody teach me that wanted that kind of precision made me a better pilot. So
absolutely,
that's why
absolutely
why that is. But and then of course you go out and you fly in a jet ranger forever until you have your hours, and then we transition to the A-Star, and then it's like, oh holy heck, look at all this power! I can do all this cool stuff, and it's a beautiful piece of equipment, and I love the A-Star. And if I never had to fly a jet ranger again, I would have been quite happy. But when you are the 120-pound pilot and they have jet rangers, who do you think flies the jet rangers? The 120-pound pilot. Until one day when I walked in to your very good friend Mike Daly, who you had on, and I went to the board and I looked at it and I said, this is bullshit. You know it and I know it. And this shit's going to stop. And he looked at me like, how? First of all, I'm the watch commander. You are you, and Mike. And I have the greatest amount of respect for supervision. I did, but I lost it that day. I came in and I looked at that board and I had it because we had 4PD, which is the biggest turd known to mankind. It was a 206 that they put air conditioning in. Who puts air conditioning in a 206? And all of the other equipment. The thing couldn't go over 75 knots, I don't think, especially with normal sized humans in it. So that's why
that was a paperweight.
People wanted to paint my name on the side of it because I had so many hours. So he looked it up, and we can do the whole thing about your audit. One thing about that you can audit is time and type. And he looked and he's like, Deb, a lot of people complain about flying them, and they've never flown even half what you do. Like a third of my time every year was always, if not more, was always in a 206. And I'm like, I'm over this. I'm done. Either get rid of the 206s or get rid of the fat asses that you have piloting here. One of the two. It's very simple, but this needs to stop. And then they made me fly it again. And it was during a TFR with then President Obama. And anybody who knows about the temporary flight restrictions, when President Obama was here, they restricted us heavily. Yeah. We had like a absolute no-fly zone. It didn't matter if 100 people were being massacred in there; they were not going to let us in it. And then there was like moving TFRs, and it was all craziness. And they give us the squawk code, and I'm flying, and I go into LA. I'm squawking discreet, and I do my thing in LA, and I need to go down to the south end, down to San Pedro, down south of LAX's airspace. LAX says, okay, Air 3 cleared out to the south, squawk VFR, have a great day. Instinct, he says it, I do it. I push the button, we're going. I get to Compton Airport, I'm like, oh crap, I put in my discreet, I keep going. I get into Torrance gets me up. Air 3, is this you? Yes, it is. You need to land, and you need to land right now.
This is the end of part 2 of our conversation with Deb Dickerson. Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Wysong Enterprises. Wysong Enterprises offers specialty rotorcraft completion facility, focusing on solutions and installs for customers in various industries, including EMS, law enforcement, energy utility, forestry, tourism, security, and corporate applications across major OEM platforms. Visit us at wysongusa.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Technisonic Communications. Technisonic Communications is a proud provider of the critical airborne communications equipment utilized every day on every mission. Law enforcement, EMS, forestry, federal and military operators all trust their communications to Technisonic. Visit TIL.ca to learn how Technisonic can support your mission communications. Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Thank you for sticking around and for supporting the companies that generously support the Hangar Z podcast. The Hangar Z podcast is a huge advocate for networking, education, and training to improve the overall industry and for career advancement, and believe the conferences are the best place for this. And now that HAI Heli Expo is over, it's time to look forward to the public safety aviation conferences that will take place later this year. APSCON is going to take place in Houston, July 29th through August 3rd, 2024. To find more information and to register, go to publicsafetyaviation.org. Later this year, the ECHO Public Safety Aviation Conference is taking place in Richmond, Virginia from September 29th through October 2nd, 2024. To find more information on that and to register, go to echoflightcrew.org. Hope to see y'all there. Cheers.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.